did a little mastering sesh for Jack in North California, which is cool. John is reskinning his drums at the moment because he's got a big ass gig tonight. I wanted to talk about signal flow in here, and like how the Pro Tools session is set up. So the first thing I'll do is I'll pull up the track in RX, and I'll listen to it. And normally I'll listen to it beforehand, like on headphones, and give any feedback. So if there's anything that's jumping out, I might ask whoever's produced it, mixed it, to change some things. Generally I'll resample, because I normally get stuff in like 41 or 48k, and I'll resample it up to 96. That on its own won't do anything, but because I use analog, I'm playing back through the analog and capturing the analog at 96k in the Pro Tools session then. So I'll overwrite the original file and then import it into the clips in Pro Tools. And then I've got 2 audio tracks, so tracks A, tracks B. The way it works is I'll put the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, however many I'm mixing, mastering even. The way that it flows in Pro Tools is you've got tracks A and B. The outputs go to this bus, which then feeds into this bus, which then goes to the master. And there's a few plugins in the session already. So I've got like Pro Q3, got the oven, just shoved a black box in there, just giving it a go. And then you've got that insert 3.4, which I can drag around. The insert 3.4 is the analog, so I can just click on it, make active, and then it's going out through the analog. If I do something in the analog domain, what I'll do is level match. So when I'm basically bypassing and I'm bypassing all of the analog, I can hear the difference that it's making straight off without it just getting louder or quieter. The main playback is coming out of the ADI2. So this is literally just 2 channels of audio out, and then I've got a mono controller, and then I've got the Barefoots and the Focals. And generally working on the Barefoots now that I've got the Arc Studio. So after the controller comes the Arc Studio, and that's just for the Barefoots at the moment. I need to get a second one for the Focals, because I did the profile for those as well, and they sound better with it. But the thing was, I couldn't be asked switching, so every time I'm switching between the monitors, I don't also want to be going into the Arc Studio software on the computer, changing that. So instead, they're just on the Barefoots, because the Barefoots were sounding pretty dire without it. The Focals are all right. The analog, the insert, goes to this Audient ID44, and then that light pipes up to the RME ADI2FS, the old one. This is just 2 channels out, 2 channels in. It starts over here with the Phoenix. And then I've got the gain turned quite high up on the Phoenix, and what I do is I drive the signal into the Phoenix from the output of the ADI2. And then basically I can drive the tubes on the input and output without compressing if I want. So I can just use this as like a tube color box, and I can compress. From here it goes to the SSL Bus Plus. Generally I just use this in classic stereo mode, and I haven't played around with the total harmonic distortion yet. I want to play around with that at some point. Then it goes to the SSL Fusion, and I don't do a hell of a lot on this. The vintage drive I like, but you can't really use it in mastering because it just hisses, which is annoying. I barely touched the EQ. I used the high frequency compressor earlier, and sometimes I use the stereo width. But what it is doing is it's got an insert loop, and when it's blue, if you hold it, it'll change to yellow, or white, whatever. When it's blue, it's in mid-side, and then the Marg is in the insert loop of the Fusion, so that turns the Marg into a mid-side EQ, so mid and side. And that's handy because I can use like the airband on the sides, which is pretty nice. Then it goes back, closes the insert loop, and then back to the RME, back into the session. So I tend to use kind of like high pass, low pass filtering, and then there's like a couple of cuts So I've just got one like at 150 and one at 400, just starting points. Sometimes if you get a bit of kind of like muddiness or that like just horribleness at 400, I can quickly just turn it in. If I need to move it around, I can move it around, drag it down, whatever, it's there. High and low pass filters, there's a massive high pass on the sides if there's like weird, horrible stereo shit going on. But I hardly ever touch that. And then kind of more sort of tonal stuff, compression, EQ, SPL, PQ, Manley, massive passive. And then I pretty much always use Ozone 11 as a limiter now. The great thing with it as well is it's got this master rebalance. So if you've got a track where the vocals are too quiet, you can literally just turn them up and it actually works. Like, I don't, it's AI powered, but you know, I can just drag the vocal up a little bit instead of trying to like EQ frequencies that are kind of where the vocal is sitting. That's really handy. I don't know how it works, it's crazy, but there's a maximizer. But then sometimes I'll hit like the L2 beforehand. And then on the Elysia Alpha Master, it's got soft clipping. So I hardly ever use this as a compressor. I pretty much only use it for soft clipping because I like the way it sounds. I should use it as a compressor more, but I think I've just got the outboard now, so I'm not too bothered about plugging compressors. And then after that there's dither, which I think a lot of people don't realise is quite important. That is how I master. So when the tracks get to here, I can send them out through a bus, and then I've got these audio tracks. So each individual track, if I'm mastering an EP or an album, whatever, you bounce them down to the separate tracks. And then what I can also do is I can actually just put the limiters on these. So my final kind of overall control is variable within the context of a whole EP or album. But I mean, most of what I'm doing at the moment is just singles. On the master bus, I've got reference. So if I need to A/B, sometimes, well, pretty much all the time, I'll A/B with the original and make sure that I'm not doing a really bad job. And then what's really important with using the analog is making sure that your left and right are equally as loud. So there's a signal generator. So the signal generator goes through the whole chain, and you can see it's slightly leaning right. So if you use a imager, you can basically figure out where the problem is. So I've turned this up, and then that's shifted it to the right, basically. So if I start turning it, I can get it level. So that way you know that when you're passing your master through the analog, so you're not pushing too far to left or right or anything like that. So it's important to check that because things, you know, move around and change. And then I've just got a U-lean loudness meter, and then that happens. I don't know why that happens. Probably just noise in the system because the analog. Yeah, it's gone now because I just made that inactive. We've been running Omnibus, and it just updated today, and it seems like there were latency issues that I think are kind of fixed now, which is good. We've got the Audient, and then that light pipes up to the RME, and then we've got the other RME. So they're both ADI2s, but that's the new one, basically. So that's USB. That's light pipe to that, which is USB-C. That's USB. And then all of them are in Omnibus. So we've kind of routed it to 16 channels in Pro Tools. It doubles up on 3 and 4 just for the mastering template to get to and from the analog. But yeah, we were using this and getting really, really weird kind of latency issues and just weird stuff going on in Logic. And then switched over to Pro Tools and it was right for a bit. And then Pro Tools was being weird as well. We haven't figured out where the problem actually is. So the plan is to get another 8-channel interface and tether via light pipe to this and use that as the main audio engine when recording. So if we're doing drum recordings in here, we can have like 16 channels then. And then I can stick with using Omnibus with the Audient and the RMEs for mastering for now. Yeah, John, what do you think of Omnibus, mate?
It was a fickle beast. We got there in the end.
You were quite polite. I thought you were like, I fucking hate it.
I did it first, yeah.
But we played around with it for a bit, didn't we, the other week, and then you got your head around it a bit more because it is fucking confusing. But
then you start to realise that it just looks like, if you imagine you're looking from a bird's eye angle at wires on a 4,
Yeah.
then that's like sort of,
Yeah, exactly.
that's the way to look at it.
Yeah.